Then I get a call back like, nah, Quando ain't got shot, Pop got shot, and that he about to go on surgery and stuff. So I'm like, all right, he gonna be good. But then I was just like, you know, when somebody passed away, all you do is think about.
After King Von was killed, tensions between Oblock and the NBA Youngboy camp never truly settled. Years later, the situation is heating up again. Lil Tim, the man who pulled the trigger the night Von died, is back online stirring the pot, openly taunting the very people still mourning their fallen figure. To understand how we got here, we have to go back to November 6, 2020, the night King Von was shot outside an Atlanta hookah lounge. Lil Tim, Quando Rondo's close friend, claimed self-defense. The courts accepted that, and the charges were dropped, but the streets never moved on. For 5 long years, the tension simmered beneath the surface. NBA Youngboy kept taking shots through his music. Lil Tim carried himself like he was untouchable, and Oblock stayed quiet, watching. Then this week, everything erupted again. King Von wasn't just another rapper. To Oblock, he was royalty, a product of Chief Keef's legacy, but cut from a different cloth. While Keef pushed drill culture into the mainstream, Von lived every lyric he wrote. His death didn't just take away an artist, it took away a leader and a symbol of hope for his neighborhood. That's why what happened recently struck so deep. NBA Youngboy dropped a freestyle called Zero IQ, laced with blatant disrespect toward Von's memory. But Lil Tim took it even further. He posted a TikTok of himself rapping along to the most inflammatory lines, bars bragging about Von's death, proudly and without any attempt to disguise it. And the timing made it even more disturbing. Lil Tim posted the video on November 6th, exactly 5 years after Von died, the same day his own grandfather passed away. The internet exploded with theories, frustration, and anger as people connected the dates. What made this moment different from past disses was its directness. No metaphors, no subliminals, no coded messages. Tim looked straight into the camera and claimed responsibility with confidence, in a clearly planned and polished video meant to get maximum attention. Oblock's Muna Ike responded instantly. He's been one of the loudest voices since Von's death, and he didn't hold back. Ike accused Lil Tim of using the shooting as a face card to stay relevant, pointing out that he only started appearing around NBA Youngboy after Von was killed. In his interview with FYBJ Maine, Ike questioned the entire image Tim tries to project, calling it clout, not credibility. According to Ike, Lil Tim didn't move like a street legend. The police got involved, the case was dismissed, and now Tim is building a persona off a tragedy. In Ike's words, it ain't like you did some street stuff and it stayed in the streets. But Ike's response didn't stop at questioning Lil Tim's credibility. He challenged the entire narrative surrounding that night in Atlanta. According to Ike and several Oblock members, the situation wasn't as clear-cut as Tim's supporters make it seem. They argue Von wasn't the aggressor, and the media twisted the story to portray Tim as a hero defending his friend. In Ike's words, Tim got lucky. Von's back was turned, and the shot wasn't some face-to-face showdown. Ike stressed that Tim should be humble, because the same fate could easily come back around. To understand how deep this beef really goes, you have to look beyond that single moment. The conflict started when King Von and his crew confronted Quando Rondo outside the Atlanta hookah lounge. Von had a notorious street reputation and wasn't one to back down. But the part most people overlook is Lil Tim's own background. According to Ike and others from Oblock, Tim wasn't a known street figure before that night. He was simply Quando's friend, a guy with a gun who reacted when he thought his man was in danger. The issue, they say, isn't the shooting itself, it's what came after. Instead of staying low, Tim used the situation to build a name for himself. He linked up with NBA Youngboy, started making music about the incident, and rode the attention like a new identity. That's what fueled Oblock's anger. Not just Von's death, but how Tim has carried himself ever since. And that brings us to the NBA Youngboy connection, where the politics get tangled. Youngboy and Lil Durk were already locked in a major feud long before Von's death. So when Tim killed Von, it became ammunition in a war much bigger than him. Overnight, the quiet friend from Savannah became Youngboy's new frontline soldier. Ike highlighted this in his interview. He'd seen Quando with YB for years, that made sense. But Tim suddenly traveling with Youngboy, appearing in videos, and acting like a hardened figure, that to Oblock felt like clout chasing disguised as loyalty. Once Tim's TikTok dropped, chaos followed immediately. Within hours, the video went viral. Comment sections erupted. Von supporters sent threats and insults. Youngboy fans defended Tim's right to speak on what happened. Oblock members joined in too, posting clips of Von and cryptic messages that sounded like direct warnings. One member posted a video listening to Von with the caption, "Long live Von, we ain't forget nothing." It was a reminder that, In their eyes, this situation is far from over. Meanwhile, Youngboy's camp stayed silent publicly. But word behind the scenes was that security around Tim and the rest of YB's circle had been tightened. Then came the part that sent the internet into a frenzy: the date. King Von died on November 6, 2020. Exactly 5 years later, on November 6, 2025, Lil Tim's grandfather passed away. Fans immediately connected the dots, claiming it was some form of cosmic payback. They pointed out that Tim posted his disrespectful TikTok on the very same day, framing the coincidence as spiritual justice or Von's revenge. Tim's supporters brushed it off as superstition, but the timing felt too strange for many to ignore, especially knowing how calculated Tim has been with his online presence. Some even noted that his grandfather was the one who largely raised him, making the parallel between the two deaths feel even more eerie. To the internet, it wasn't just coincidence. It felt like the universe keeping score. The reaction from Chicago was immediate. Oblock affiliates began posting cryptic messages that sounded like direct threats toward Lil Tim. Old footage of King Von resurfaced with captions like, "We still here," and "Justice coming." Even artists outside Oblock, including people connected to FBG Duck, despite their own history of conflict, spoke out in support of Von's memory, calling Tim's behavior disrespectful. The tension got so real that several venues reportedly canceled NBA Youngboy shows due to safety concerns. Promoters didn't want to risk violence from anyone attempting to confront Tim during a performance. Online, the response was even more explosive. Oblock members and Von supporters flooded social media with warnings and insults. Comment sections under Tim's TikTok became battlegrounds, with fans of both sides going at each other nonstop. But according to people close to the situation, this wasn't just internet talk. Oblock members were actively looking for Tim. In their eyes, he's been hiding behind Youngboy's security, and they want to confront him without that protection. Law enforcement has been paying attention too. Atlanta police reportedly increased patrols around locations connected to Youngboy's circle, determined to prevent another violent incident like the one that ended Von's life. Even within the music industry, labels and promoters have been quietly discussing whether Tim's latest stunt crossed a line that could endanger artists and fans. All of this highlights how much social media has changed the landscape. Years ago, beef stayed in the streets, and most people kept quiet. Now, a single TikTok can spark nationwide chaos. Tim could have laid low and lived comfortably under Youngboy's protection. Instead, he keeps feeding the fire, and Oblock has no intention of letting that slide, especially when it comes to defending King Von's legacy. What makes this feud even more tragic is how deeply rooted it is. Von's death set off a chain reaction that's been burning for 5 years. Every time things calm down, another diss, live stream, or post pulls everyone back into the cycle. It's a pattern that reflects a much larger issue: how drill culture and street politics keep consuming young men who could be building something better. Von was just 26 when he died. Tim is still young himself. Both could have followed completely different paths. And then there's the eerie date connection. Von died on November 6, 2020. Tim's grandfather passed on the same day in 2025. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe there's something more to it. But the timing only made emotions spike even higher. What's clear is that Tim's TikTok didn't just spark outrage. It put a target on him. In Chicago, many see him as the most wanted man connected to this situation. Oblock has never been known to forgive or forget, and this feud shows no signs of slowing down. Every song, every video, every disrespectful moment adds fuel to a fire that's already out of control. At this point, the question isn't if something will happen, it's when.